Councillors and members of the public in the gallery and those joining via Zoom. Welcome to this ordinary council meeting. Recordings of the council meeting or parts thereof cannot be copied, recorded, reproduced, reused or retransmitted without the prior written consent of the General Manager. The meeting is to be recorded and made publicly available on council's website, and persons attending the meeting should refrain from making any defamatory statements. Council acknowledges that this meeting is being held on the traditional lands of the Wiradjuri, Gungungara and Darug people, and respects the history and culture of elders both past and present. Father Reynolds was to give the prayer this evening, but he has asked Lois Gibbons to represent him. If you'd like to give us the prayer. Everyone stand.
Just a short reading from James, chapter 1, verses 5 to 7 and 22 to 25, and then short prayer. Can you hear me? Because I'm not through.
Stand in the middle if you like. That would make it easier.
Just tell me. If any one of you lacks wisdom, ask God for it, because he gives to everyone easily and unconditionally. But you should ask with faith, not doubting, for those who doubt are like a wave driven and tossed by the wind on the sea. Such a person should not expect anything from the Lord. Be doers of the word and not just hearers, lest you deceive yourselves. The hearer who does not become a doer is like a person who looks at themselves in the mirror and then promptly forgets what they look like. But those who fix their gaze on the perfect law of freedom and holds on to it, not listening and then forgetting, but acting on it, will find blessings on their deeds. Heavenly Father, may our counsellors be blessed with your wisdom, so that they may give selflessly, listen attentively, speak with honesty, integrity, respect, compassion, and fairness, so that their deliberations will lead to the decisions that can be acted on for the greater good of all. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Thank you, Lois. All right, record of attendance. There is an apology from Councillor McKechnie, and Deputy Mayor Andrew McKibben is on his way. He'll be running a few minutes late. We'll also make a slight change to the staff attendance. Matthew Webb is recorded as the acting corporate services director, and that's entirely incorrect. He is now the corporate services director. Congratulations, Matt. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any declarations this evening? No. So we now move on to the presentation, and this evening Sandy Bathgate is going to provide a presentation in relation to the pump hydro project on the Fisher Line. Sandy? Vanessa,
Spoiler alert, sorry, I'll be speaking first. My apologies to all of you. If the Central West Pumped Hydro project goes ahead, food security, farmers and families will be under threat. This is Sandy Bathgate and I'm Vanessa Mann. This evening we speak to you on behalf of over 300 concerned community members, many of whom are from our very own local government area. We are not here objecting to pumped hydro in Australia, and many of our group passionately believe that we need to move towards sustainable sources of renewable energy. We are here, however, to discuss the suitability of the site and the sustainability of taking such significant quantities of water from the Fish River. This project represents the industrialisation of a rural community for the profit of an international company. So they're planning on taking more than 1,300 Olympic swimming pools will be sucked from the Fish River to fill the dam. So that is 4 times Oberon's annual water usage simply to start the project. They will then take 50% of Oberon's annual water usage each year to keep the dams topped up. The site is off Molybdenite Road and it spans more than 10 kilometres in length and takes in over 1,100 acres. This site is home to more than 43 critically endangered and vulnerable species. This project is set atop of Mount Tennyson, which has previously been mined for gold, copper, tungsten, and molybdenite. This project threatens the future of our communities, the future of our heritage, flora and fauna, and the future of the Fish River. And we believe that these are the 3 key points that relate to our local LGA. Now, my professional background is in health science, and I'm privileged to hold a master's in public health. Research supports that mercury and arsenic emitted from the blasting process of rocks containing gold, copper, and molybdenite are neurotoxic and carcinogenic, even at very low levels of exposure. Food security should be one of our major concerns here. Studies have demonstrated that elevated arsenic and mercury concentrations have been found in surface water and soil as far as 15 kilometres from the blasting site, and even further via volatilized airborne particles. All homes within that 15-kilometre radius of the proposed blast site will be unable to collect safe drinking water, will be unable to safely eat fruit and vegetables grown within the 706 square kilometre contamination zone. This takes in over 1,000 property lots. Families are also exposed through, and they can expect to have decreased life expectancy, birth defects, a 3-fold increase in the frequencies of cancers. So that's a 300% increase in our cancer rates, increased frequency in pulmonary tuberculosis and pleural diseases, as well as increased frequency in diseases of the blood, skin, and musculoskeletal system. Kidney disease and chronic obstructive pulmonary diseases also increase, and so does silicosis, which is the irreversible stiffening and thickening of the lungs. However, it's the children and the teenagers who will suffer unduly with neurological effects and increased disease simply because of where they were reared. Our farmers also set to suffer, with studies showing that mercury biomagnifies in the food web to hazardous levels, which have been detected in higher order fish and other edible animals and plants surrounding the blast site. Our farmers will suffer increased stock death and disease, and they will risk being unable to sell their stock for meat, unable to sell edible crops, and their land values will decrease. From a public health perspective, this fails farmers, families, flora, fauna, and our future generations.
One of the key factors in this project is its effect on our environment. Now, prima facie, these effects will not affect Oberon. They will only be in Bathurst LGA. But there are lots of people in the Oberon Shire that are very, very concerned about the environment. And you've heard that some of the effects could well spread quite a distance. There are 2 critically endangered ecosystems in the project area. There are 5 critically endangered species of plants and animals. There are 16 endangered species of plants and animals and 22 vulnerable species, one of which is the purple copper butterfly, found in only 3 places in the world. Oberon, this project site and Lithgow. Environmental effects from this project are enormous and very, very concerning. The project will be quite visible from just about every vantage point in O'Connell, just about every road up and down the Fish River, particularly O'Connell, will be able to see the project. They'll see the rock wall of the large Turkey's Nest Dam sitting on the top of Mount Tennyson at 1,200 metre elevation. And they'll see the 1,400 metre long penstock pipe running down the side of Mount Tennyson, 5 metres in diameter. In terms of heritage issues, Aboriginal cultural heritage is quite an important factor that the project has failed to address so far. It's quite clear that there's very, very significant Aboriginal cultural heritage and sites along Frying Pan Creek where this project is located and in the project area itself. On the left slide, you see some of the Aboriginal stone tools and objects that have been collected just below the project site. On the right, just go back, is Lindell Green Barn at O'Connell. Now, from a heritage perspective, there are over 100 European heritage items within 15 kilometres of this radius of this project. And the blasting that Vanessa mentioned, which involves blasting the top off the Tennyson Dam, it's likely to create vibrations which would well jeopardise buildings like the Lindell Green Barn, the earliest existing earth building in Australia. But the big issue, the biggest issue of all for people in the Oberon Shire, particularly in O'Connell and up and down the Fish River, the big issue is water security. You've heard very, very significant amounts of water will be taken and never returned. This water is locked away. Pumped hydro system does not return water back into the river or back into the community. It locks it away forever. So this water is gone every year. Another 6 months supply equivalent to Oberon's water take disappears. There are a substantial number of people downstream of this project on the Fish River that rely on it for their livelihoods. There are 19 irrigators. There's many stock and domestic water users and many people with bores in the riparian zone. The consequences, as we've already heard, are lower farming productivity, fewer livestock, lower farm incomes, health risk. Aquatic life is impacted, community amenity is reduced, therefore lower population growth and reduced property values. The slide is of the Fish River in the last drought. I ask you, where is 4 years worth of Oberon's water supply going to come out of that pool? The fact is there's not enough water in the Fish River already. And this project is going to make things worse for everybody who relies on it. So thank you very much for listening to us, and hopefully we've got time for a few questions if you have them. Thank you, Sandy.
Yes, Mr. Bathgate, I've heard that ATCO are trying to secure current water licences downstream. If they don't get the water from the Fish River, will they take the water from the Oberon Dam?
That's a very, very pressing issue. There is a strong likelihood they won't get the water license. We've spoken to most of the licence holders, especially the big ones up and down the Fish River, not just downstream but upstream. It's 42 altogether, and none of them are prepared to sell, and every one of them is horrible about this project. So the question then becomes, where does ATCO get the water? And chances are they will revert to a previous plan they had, which was to take the water from Oberon Dam to get some of the allocation that goes to Sydney Water or the previous power station application. Bathurst Council tried to do the same and was rejected twice during the drought. This is really a state government project, and just how hard the state government pushes to get this across the line might determine where this water is going to come from. But if it comes out of Oberon Dam, potentially it affects Oberon Township.
Anyone else? The question I had is, we talk about Mount Tennyson and how it faces into O'Connell and blasting the top off. How long would that be happening for?
Well, look, we're not quite sure of the detail, but the scoping report put out by ADCO, which is 200-300 pages, says that the construction will take 3.5 years. So chances are we're going to see quite some considerable time period involving this blasting operation. There are 2 blasting sites. One is the top of Mount Tennyson, where they have to create a dam out of rocky molybdenite, one of the hardest substances in the world. And the other is down the bottom of the mountain on the Frying Pan Creek, where they have to blast a 60-metre deep hole to contain the 2 turbines and pumps that will drive the water up and will create the electricity as the water drops through on the way down. So for how long we don't know, but certainly it'll be many months, if not years. But the local communities there will be impacted by construction for 3.5 years. You know. They're already being impacted, even though there's no approval. People's lives are being torn apart by this project, particularly on the top of Mount Tennyson. People who have built homes and trying to establish livelihoods up there are tearing their hair out and in tears up there, sitting in front of me, crying their eyes out because this project is destroying their dreams, even though it hasn't even started. They cannot sell their property. Nobody's going to buy a property. This thing looming over the top. And, it's tragic seeing some of the circumstances.
Sandy, have you got references or links you can provide me for the ecological issues that you've outlined?
Absolutely, yeah.
Just email them to me.
I can send them to you. There's a complete list both in the ATCO scoping report of all the endangered species. These are listed in state and federal government legislation and identified within the project area. We've actually had our own professional environmentalists do the same study, and they're remarkably similar, but pretty similar conclusions. So yeah, I'm happy to provide that.
Any other questions from councillors? Councillor Cuthbert?
You said that the water comes down the hill and drives the 2 turbines, or two turbines. So doesn't the water get reinstated back into the water system after that?
The pumped hydro is a bit of a difficult concept to grasp, but it involves a loop. And so you pump a body of water up a hill, and then you drop it and you pump it into a reservoir at the top of it, and then release it down a pipe through the turbines to create electricity. And you capture it again in a dam at the bottom of the reservoir at the bottom. So 2 reservoirs, one there and one there. The water goes up, down, and up, down, and up, and down, never to see the light of day again.
But it's not environmental friendly because it doesn't create electricity because you've got the friction loss. In other words, the water comes down and say hypothetically creates 100 megawatts of power, and then to send the water back up, it's going to cost you 110 megawatts to pump it up. So therefore, it doesn't happen. It's the same as the one in the Snowy Mountains, except that the dam's already up the top.
Yeah, I mean, you've got it in one. But the amount of power you use to pump the water up is 20% greater than the amount of power you generate through the turbines on the way down. So this is a power using project, not a power creating project. It's a 20%, around about 20, some projects more, 20% inefficiency. So you say, well, why do it? Doesn't make sense. Well, the way the business model works is that you buy the electricity to pump up when it's cheap. You create the electricity on the way down when it's expensive. So typically, you would buy it in the middle of the day when there's lots of solar power going on and it's cheap on the spot market. And then you sell it in the evenings when everybody turns their air conditioners and their lights. The arbitrage in the pricing is how you make your money. So it's pure commercially, it's just a pure money play on the price of electricity.
Okay. My other biggest concern is, the federal government have also said that they're going to try and change things around by 2030, which is only a 7.5-year plan around. But things like this could get a Guernsey in respect that, they've got that commitment now. People fall on their commitment, but yeah.
The federal government also today, I don't know if any of you heard Tanya Plexus, respond to the National Press Club today at 1 p.m. and with the release of the environmental document. So I think we might see some positive change in that space as well to counteract possibly in this particular case, the push towards renewables.
The reality is that there are much better places to put this. Study on which the whole government policy is based identifying 20,000 potential sites, 98,000 potential configurations, and some of those which are being activated elsewhere, and far, far less environmental and social and water impacts than this one. You know, there's a great big one in central Queensland which is using a disused mine. It's full of water down the bottom. Same system, but doesn't hurt anybody. It's not a big one out on the escarpment out of Kempsey, on Clarence, I think. Where there is a ton of water. You know, they get triple the amount of water that we get.
Oh, sorry, I think Mr. Bathgate made the comment about pump hydro. I was going to make the comment about the powering where it's pumped up during when power's cheap, but that's already been made. So my only comment is that talking about the northern rivers, some would suggest that pumping it back through and actually using the water once it's created hydro like they've done in New Zealand might be more sensible than pump power. Taking 10% out of each of the northern rivers, but that's a different topic. I'll leave that aside.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you again.
Thank you for your time.
My apologies, Chair.
That's okay. Gallery is open to members of the community in accordance with the requirements under the current public health order. Any questions from the public will be able to be asked in person. The community is to be given the opportunity to ask questions at the commencement of the council meeting. The mayor is to ask the questions from the gallery prior to the commencement of the ordinary meeting. Members of the public wishing to address council are permitted to do so, providing the following guidelines are adhered to. The person asking the question at the council meeting must clearly state their name and what capacity they are acting. The person asking the questions is acting as another person's or organisation's agent. They must advise council if they have their prior consent or authority. Questions from the public is not an opportunity for debate with elected representatives or staff. It's an opportunity for the community to ask a question in relation to an issue or to put a point of view relating to an issue that may be causing interest or concern. Due to time constraints, a time frame of 3 minutes per speaker is allocated. All questions and comments must be directed through the mayor, and in the instance of a question, if it cannot be answered, it will be taken on notice and a response given within a reasonable period of time. This is the only opportunity for a community member to address council during the ordinary meeting. Are there anyone wishing to ask a question or voice an opinion?
Mayor, Vicky Walsh from the laundry pad, owner operator. I'm just wondering when or how or what the solution is with the water problem that I'm experiencing.
That's right this week.
Uh,
Or the whole.
Continually,
Yeah.
well, it appears that yes, you did get clean flow through, but the problem, in my view, has not been fixed. So I'm just asking, is there a plan in place for the next stage of maybe fixing this problem? Or like, have you got any suggestions on when it may be fixed or how?
Okay, we'll take that on notice and we'll provide you an answer as in a reasonable amount of time. We have, in fact, a number of us spent a fair part of today going over all the figures for the mineral content of the water that's coming into the water treatment plant and what's going out and what's being recorded at the 5 or 6 sites around town where we take daily testing. And we will provide you with a written answer as soon as possible.
Thank you.
All right, confirmation for anyone else?
Yeah, again about the water issue.
And your name is?
Catherine Walker. My concern is the little ones in town. Are they being affected by manganese in the water? And if it is a high level that's not safe for children, are parents being advised to make sure their kids are drinking bottled water rather than town water?
Yeah, through the chair, I'm happy to take that on notice, but at this stage, the levels of manganese are within the Australian drinking water guidelines. I guess,
We'll give you a more complete answer. When you leave, you can leave your contact details with Mrs. Fennell. Any other questions? All right, confirmation of minutes. Recommendations of the minutes for the ordinary meeting held on the 21st of June, 2022 be confirmed. Councillor McKibben, Councillor Tucker, Councillor McKibben.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm very happy to move the minutes of the 21st of June 2022 being approved.
You, Councillor Tucker.
likewise, I think very much recorded.
There was one minor change, was there not, Mrs. Fennell?
Which was councillor McCarthy.
Yeah. Item 1205, the traffic advisory and local committee meeting. We missed out Councillor McCarthy as a secondary on that. That has been put in pen script and we'll confirm that with the minutes when I sign them. All right, I'll put the motion, all in favour? Unanimously. Item 9, the mayoral minute and report. And the summary is the report summarises the main activity for the mayor since the last report. Move in second, please. Councillor Hayden, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation in the report, and it was a lovely citizenship ceremony, and I do wouldn't offer my apologies for the 9th of July when we had the Silver Nagel ceremony with the rest.
Councillor McCarthy.
I'm happy, just a question, in the meetings, there's no recorded meeting with Hugh and Stewart?
I didn't have one with you.
He didn't have a meeting. Okay, he indicated to me that he did have.
I had spoken to him in the street,
Okay,
which is not a meeting.
okay, all right, no. But the way he spoke, he gave him an outcome to a problem that we couldn't address at the heritage meeting, that was all.
I think that's probably overstating it.
Well, it's a source of funding that he was happy with, and we couldn't give him that information at heritage meeting because we didn't think it was the council problem. And you've indicated per what he told me, that you said it could come possibly, I said possibly, out of the town beautification fund. Well, I don't think, okay, well, I don't think that we should be,
Misunderstanding.
yeah, well, I don't think we should be given an indication like that, that money could come out of that to facilitate private trees, that's all.
No, I agree with you, and I'm pretty sure I didn't do that.
Well, he indicated to me later on that he said, that Mr. Callum, the mayor, indicated that there was a solution in this, that funds could possibly come from this resource. So,
No, I wouldn't have indicated that for someone for private purposes.
okay, I must be a liar again, sorry.
No, I'm not calling you a liar, I'm saying.
No,
he is
that's
perhaps
fine.
misunderstanding what was said.
Okay,
Anyone else? Councillor Gibbon?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know halfway down page 7 that the Central New South Wales Joint Organisation, the new CEO of Telstra, Vicky Brady, was there. I suppose it was really not an opportunity to raise the Quarters Street or the Black Springs Tower.
We did,
On those occasions.
and the Black Springs in particular. They're working with Crown Lands in New South Wales to get a football rental for the site in Black Springs where we put it. And I think that is probably working reasonably well now. The other interesting thing you mentioned there was the fact that there is no overarching strategy within Telstra to provide greater access to mobile communication in rural areas.
So is it ad hoc
They will
or-
only do black spots, and they will do black spots because they are funded by the federal government, not by Telstra.
And in relation to, in relation to point of trade, there seems to be an issue, because I think we've mentioned before that they seem to be transmitting at lower, the effectiveness of the tower seems to have diminished, putting lots of people around there.
And I think there's the data collection process going on at the moment for that.
Okay, that's fine. I do remember something, but I just, and the bottom of page 11, second item from the bottom. Hey, would you get, can you, so these are new grant opportunities.
Which one's it?
Sorry, page 9.
Page 9. Page 9.
Sorry, did I say page 11? Yep. Second last item, 11th of July.
Yep.
The two, I take it they're grants there that are going to be offered for the two. Do we have any further details, or that was just the detail that was given?
Through the chair, it could probably help. That fund hasn't been released at this point in time. We're expecting it in early August. They are opportunities for potential grant fund.
And do we have any heads up of what criteria they're going to apply at this stage, so we can get ready to go?
When they're released in August, we'll
Okay.
know any about what.
Okay, so we're confident we'll have enough time to get our
Yes.
ducks in a
Yes.
ducks in a row. Sorry, that was all, because I noticed and thought, oh, we better make sure we've got our ducks in a row. All right, I'm very obviously happy with what I did the proposal second, so I'm just commenting on it. You know?
No, 5.
Right?
okay, right.
Any other questions? Councillor Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a question on 2 items on page 9, the third and the 5th items. They both relate to systems to forewarn motorists when the bridge is overtopped. So firstly, just to mention in the first one, the third item down, it suggests a sign be placed at Shooter's Hill Abercrombie Road intersection. Well, there was, and I assume there still is a sign not far past that intersection, a bold out one, and I assume that still gets opened out when the bridge is overtopped. The more important question I wanted to ask was, a few months ago, it came up in some emails between councillors about something that was looked at a number of years ago of putting a camera at the bridge that sends via satellite a photo every 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Can then either go on the websites or go to the transport centre or to other councils or to individual makers to look at it. I just wonder if there's any interest among councillors to have another look at whether that is viable and when it might possible. I know it wasn't outrageously expensive when it was looked at a number of years ago.
There is a automatic height recording for water down the other bridge, I believe, is that correct?
There is a reference that we do use through the web in terms of the height of the actual river, which has an indication then on the height of the bridge or inundation.
Height of the causeway.
Correct, so that's,
And does that send messages back
well, it's,
automatically, or does someone have to go and check it?
no, it's live data that certainly runs on a frequency or an interval of frequency to indicate the river level, certainly when it's rising, as opposed then to the deck level or the running level of the bridge. Gives us an indication, which I don't propose, obviously, having a camera, of course, but that's a mechanism that we are currently using to determine inundation.
Right, so that avoids the need to have an hour or two delay for someone to go down and check it
Correctly.
several times a day.
And safety.
Yeah.
And so we can monitor.
Which was the whole idea of the camera proposal as well, just to make it a lot quicker and a lot less labour intensive.
Yeah, certainly with the installation of the mobile tower there, which would be great if we could get coverage down at the bottom. But again, it would be satellite generated, imagine.
Yes, the previous proposal did operate via satellite.
So
So it was only like once every 10 minutes or something.
Yeah, so other than the live data feed that we can sort of see 24/7 at the minute in terms of the river behaviour is what we run on in terms of the levels, the existing road platform. That makes sense?
That makes sense.
Anyone else? All right, declaration, all in favour? Carried unanimously. Notice of motion. Notice of motion of the town for the town improvement levy. I'm going to do this particular item in two parts. First part is one, that a meeting be arranged to discuss the future of the town improvement levy, including A, whether to continue collecting the levy, B, the amount to be collected, C, the area where the levy will be collected, guidelines for the types of projects eligible to be funded from the levy, and processes for selecting projects to be funded, including the possibility of establishing a section 355 committee to advise on project priorities. I'll move in a secondary. Councillor Tucker, Councillor McCarthy, Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm assuming this one will be reasonably straightforward, given that I believe that was the general consensus that came out of our discussion last week, and noting that the general manager's note at the bottom that he's intended to hold a workshop in October, November to discuss exactly those matters. So I don't need to talk too much more about number one.
Councillor McCarthy,
Pretty straightforward, thank you.
anyone else? Excuse me, anyone else? I'll put the motion for item one. All those in favour? That's carried unanimously. Item two, that the list of projects selected for funding from the town improvement levy in 2022-23 be cancelled, and that this be reconsidered after discussion of the future of the levy. Do I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Tucker. The seconder?
I'll second for discussion.
Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Tucker.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, as it says, where the idea behind this is not to have the discussion today and to repeat last month's discussion about how the funding should be distributed. And that should happen after we've had that discussion as proposed in motion number one. I would hope that when we have that meeting, that we can reach a reasonable sort of consensus about the types of projects that should be funded from the TI fund. And then in accordance with that, we could come up with a distribution to various projects. So we're suggesting that the allocations that were decided last month be cancelled for the time being. Those funds to remain as unallocated funds for now. And I'll point out that there's currently about 1.4 million in TI already allocated to projects. And so that's plenty of other work that we can be going on with in the meantime for the next couple of months. Noting also that this has been a somewhat contentious topic. There's been a fair amount of commentary among town residents. So I would hope that putting the discussion off until after the meeting will demonstrate good faith towards Oberon ratepayers. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Carthy.
Yeah, I just think it needs a bit of review. And one of the main thing is comes out of it is the 350,000 supporting the hub when the hub's available to a whole shire of people. So anyway, I'll support this. Yeah, I don't think we should be milking the TI fund for something that supports the whole community, that's all.
Councillor Gibbon.
I'd speak against this one, on the basis that I have no problem that we should be discussing the TI fund on the way ahead with the TI fund. I see that there will be a workshop, as indicated by the General Manager, in October, November. But there may well be further investigations or issues arising out of those discussions. And obviously out of that, there may become resolutions, but I don't see motions arising from that workshop arising till probably later in the year or early in calendar year 2023. And I'm concerned that we will just have a hold up of things that are currently being looked at in the TI fund or to be undertaken in 2022-23, when we really need to move along with those. And I have no problem. And I would have thought that if we decide to change the town improvement levy and the uses that it can be used for, if I put it in those terms, then that probably the most appropriate time for that to take effect would be in the 2023-24 financial year, so that we can actually do it for a full financial year and going ahead.
Yes, I speak against that motion as well. We have projects that need to be started and finalised. And I don't agree.
Councillor Trimble.
I also speak against this motion, as I agree that we need to do a post workshop and we sort of evaluated everything. And there may have been people who were not happy with the decision, but there's a lot of people in our LGA that will benefit with the projects that we have allocated for them.
Councillor Grant.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'd also speak against it. I agree with Councillor McKibben in that if we do make changes, we can do it next year. We shouldn't go backwards and take out what we've already done, I don't think.
I also will speak against this motion. I think that we need to continue with the projects that we've allocated the money to. And I think that with the introduction of the operational plan for 2023-24 is the time to do it. Anyone else wish to speak? You have a right to reply if you wish, Councillor Tucker. All right, I'll put the motion that the list of projects selected for funding from the town improvement levy in 22-23 be cancelled, and this be reconsidered after discussion of the future of the levy. All those in favour? Against? One in favour, Councillor Tucker, the rest were against. All right, councillors, item 1101. This is the Oberon Business and Tourist Association report from the 15th of June 2022 meeting. Summary, it's Councillor Hayden attended the Opta meeting, and the recommendation is that report item 1101 is received as information. I have a mover, Councillor Hayden, and Councillor Pembas. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I attended, it's just a basic report. There was just some discussion once again about rubbish bins and food vendors. And a more lengthy discussion regarding bus parking again, which is basically in the report. And yeah, that's it.
Councillor Pembas.
Yes, thank you very much, councillor Hayden, for such a great important update. It was actually very informative, so nothing really further to say other than it's very good to get a bit of an insight into some of our work.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd agree with your comments to Member looking forward. I'm just wondering, have you got a resolution about this situation with the buses? Because I read the report, and obviously, and I think so. Where are we with the buses? I was a bit confused because I noticed that we've spoken to Mayfield, and there was a reference to speaking to general manager about it. About are these buses stopping up? Have we got a resolution, or do we know the answer at this stage, or am I speaking? You know, I'm not sure. I read the report and was a bit confused.
So through the chair, Opta supplied a letter to council asking about, is there any areas for buses to stop?
Yes, okay.
Council supplied a response to Opta in regards to where known bus zones are. And indicated that they are within close proximity to the main street. If buses drive through Oberon to go to Mayfield, it's not something that council can force.
No, we can't put a hand up, stop.
No, there are some limitations to what council can do, but we highly encourage a collaborative approach to making, or certainly involving buses to stop in Oberon. So that the response has been supplied to Opta from our perspective. We also said that in all the communities around a lot of the Central West, Oberon's wide streets and accommodating areas make it very easy to park buses and the like in and around the main street, and we encourage people to do it.
I mean, the other issue is to contact the bus company.
And tour operators are also.
Anyone else? Comment? I'll put the motion that report item 1101 is received as information. All in favour? Passed unanimously. 1102, Upper Macquarie County Council meeting of the 24th of June 2022. The recommendation is that the report item 1102 is received as information. Councillor Gibbon, Councillor Hayden, Councillor Gibbon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the report speaks for itself. Obviously, we've had one successful prosecution. Upper Macquarie County Council's legal costs have been ordered to be paid by the defendant, and there's a bond in place to ensure that the work's done in by, I think it's end of the year, and if it's not, further action will be taken by the court. Further prosecutions are commencing for those who have failed to observe directions and penalty infringement notices. Apart from that, the report speaks for itself.
Councillor Hayden,
Happy to second the report, good report. Thank you.
any further comments from anyone? Councillor Pembas.
This is really a question.
That's right.
When you talk about prosecutions, what are those prosecutions for? And this is just for me, myself.
Oh, so the prosecution is basically officers have provided directions or they've gone through a weed control notice, which is first to say, please clean up your, a night notice saying, could you please clean up your weeds because you're providing a biosecurity risk to your neighbours and to others. And then we allow a period of time to go. And that doesn't occur. again, the person's approached where possible and given further encouragement, finally a directions issue, which says you must clean up your weeds. And the normal process is that if that is not observed, a penalty infringement notice is issued, which is only $1,000 fine. And then quite often, in some cases, a second penalty infringement notice is issued, and they either don't clean up, don't pay the fine, quite often both. And then the next thing is you take them to court and say, right, we're going to prosecute you, seek a penalty of say $22,000. We're going to do the work to clean it up if you're not prepared to, and we're going to charge you to do the work. And we also give that bill for our legal costs. That's put it in simplified.
I recognize this doesn't have the detail.
And in tandem, I can say that we are speaking to agricultural ministers and New South Wales farmers, etc., for setting up a fund to actually allow the prosecution of these of people, so we can draw on the fund to do the cleanup work. And when we receive it back from the defendants, which could be an instalment order over 15 years, we pay back into the fund. That's being pushed as well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
It's okay. Anyone else? Questions? All right, I'll put the motion that report item 1102 is received as information. All in favour?
We had a further question.
No, I was raising
That's passed unanimously. Item 1201.
Okay.
The Central Tablelands Alliance Audit Risk and Improvement Committee. The recommendation is that report 1201 be received as information. And that council review the existing terms of reference and develop a new draft terms of reference and circulate these to the committee prior to its endorsement at the next Audit Risk and Improvement Committee meeting. And in developing the new terms of reference, the guidelines on page 683 to be referenced. Yeah. If I'm not sure about whether.
Just for clarification, it's page 83 of the draft.
Yeah.
Terms of reference put together by the state, not 83 of this report.
The mover and second, please. Councillor McKibben, Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very glad that both you and Councillor Tucker were present, because this is obviously a very important issue for us as Oberon Council to make sure we have an appropriate audit risk and improvement committee. I'm also happy to see as one of the issues that was considered and going to be looked at is the enterprise risk management program. And I actually thought the minutes, well, the report was good, but the minutes were particularly good in the detail I went into and what's being done and what's being considered. Obviously, we have the attendees. This will the independent, Wolfie and Philip Ross. I think both previous members weren't they? And John O'Malley, who's with Independence, is well aware of Oberon's position. So I'm pleased to see this is moving forward, and I commend all those present, including our two attendees, that this seems to be going ahead and making it making this audit and risk and improvement committee work for the benefit of Oberon Council in providing that independence and being able to actually address things that we need to be addressed properly and for what it should do. So I'm very happy with that. Thank you.
Yes, I'm happy to second. I feel it is important to have the terms of reference developed and have our own standalone LPA out there. So I'm just happy. Yeah, it's a good report, and I'm happy to second the motion.
If you want to have a second. I'll just observe that if you, I agree with you about the minutes there, Councillor McKibben, and I commend the corporate services director for the work that's put into those. It makes it much easier to read and much easier to follow the process. Possibly people help do the minutes.
And I think probably the finance manager as well probably had quite a bit to do. So I forgot to say, Mr. Mayor, I would commend the staff of attendance. But they were very impressive minutes.
All right, so we will now I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against nil. No, passed unanimously. All right, item 1301, policy review 2404 independent living units. And the recommendation is that council place the draft policy 2404 for the independent living units on public exhibition for 28 days, and submissions be invited to council during that period. And two, if no submissions are received within the exhibition period, policy be adopted as presented. The movement second, please. Councillor McKibben, Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Bear. I do, I've always thank the author for providing the corporate services director. I did note at the beginning of the board papers, there was a reference to the acting corporate services director.
We corrected that.
We have been corrected. Thank you. That's what happens when you're right. So I do thank you for the markup policy because it makes it much easier. And I'm more than happy to move the recommendations. My only question is that there may, if there could be some allowance for maybe just clarifying a little better the wording before it's actually endorsed on page 3 or 4, which is page 28. I think it was a little difficult, the sentence that said each meeting shall determine a priority shortlist that staff can offer placements to prospective tenants until an offer has been accepted. I was a little bit confused about that sentence. I'm just wondering if it could be, I think we get the gist of it, but if it could be slightly reworded to, it just, I think I understand it, but I'm having some difficulty. Maybe not. Others may have to do. I just think I think what it's each meeting shall determine a priority shortlist of prospective tenants, which staff can offer placements to. Is that what it's meant to say?
So through the chair, the sentence basically says that at each meeting, a list of candidates will be prioritized.
Yeah.
And then from that, staff will go through that list. If the first one says, thank you for considering me, I don't want it, we gave it 2. I don't want it, 3, yes, I'll take it. That means that it's been filled, and then we'll start again at the next week. So ultimately, once a priority has gone through, a priority list that staff can then allocate accordingly.
Okay.
Once it's been accepted, the list is finalised, and we go back and do it again.
I think the words can.
Yeah, I think the words can be different. I do understand what you're saying.
I note the concern.
I don't want this not to go on copy because and I just note that we've used ILU in some places and then we've reverted to independent living units, which is not a major issue. So, and I don't really think that's a major issue. I think if we could just tweak that. So I'm quite happy for it to go, and I don't mind saying that the general manager be authorised to make any necessary changes, if that's what we need to do as a third item.
Through the chair, I think it's quite simple that we're trying to get the same result, so that's not required. I've just wrote, and correct me if I'm giving away from it, but each meeting shall determine a priority shortlist, full stop.
Yes.
Staff can offer placements to prospective tenants based on that priority list.
Yes.
Until an offer has been accepted.
Yes, I think that's the way to do it.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand that. Yes, yeah. No,
So if we just change that to that, with that.
Well, that's part of the consideration.
yeah, right, happy.
Yes, happy to second this, and it's really good to see the pet allowance for an emotional support animal is, you know, that is something these days that does help a lot of different members of the public. Also the age requirement in here as well. I was very pleased to see that, and the additional community member. So I'm happy happy to step into the board.
All right, any more? Councillor McCarthy.
Doesn't show on the page 32. It only shows the one committee member. You need to change that now, don't you?
No, two. It's now two community
Yeah.
members.
That's.
Through the chair. This was the structure that was
Yeah.
originally endorsed by council, which is
Yeah.
why it's there. If council through the exhibition, then we change that, we would then change it that way.
Okay, no, that's fine. My only concern is that the person suggested for that position, I've followed a couple of meetings that they've been absent from that community meeting, so I don't know whether we're going to choose anything, but
Well-
anyway, it's there for someone else to take the position.
Yeah.
Councillor Pembroke.
I did put that person forward as a suggestion and they have a very big commitment to that area. And I don't think that you'll see the same thing.
Can you clarify that? That they're on another committee of council and they haven't attended that. So this is another committee of council.
And what committee is that?
Sorry, could I suggest that this, we're only talking about numbers here,
Yeah. we're not
and that
changing
discussion should occur not here in this meeting, please. Because, yeah. The person who's put forward, I agree, can be discussed, but not, it's not part of this resolution yet. Right.
Anyone else? Look, I'm of view there is a little bit of tightening up to do with the document, and that can be done as part of the consultation process in the next 28 days. So I'll put the recommendation, all those in favour? Against? None? Passed unanimously. Item 1302, tender 2022/4, fixing local roads grant, Arkstone Road rehabilitation. The recommendation is that we nominate the open tendering method as prescribed in accordance with clause 166B of the Local Government Regulation 2005, both full service stabilisation and or partial stabilisation service options to assist in the delivery of these works in accordance with the tender T 2022/4. And part two, upon completion of the mandatory 21-day tender period, a further report will be provided to the council for award of the tender determination. So I move and second.
Could I, just before we put, Mr. Mayor, could I ask? This council is now aware of companies that provide stabilisation and partial stabilisation services from previous tenders. Is it therefore necessary to use the open tendering method, or can be used a selective tendering method, because that would shorten the time frame, I would assume. And we're now well aware of it from Burriga Road, Campbell River Road, those companies that provide these services. So we should be able to just go to those companies and say, right.
Through the chair, I think at this stage it's better off go open tendering. I think it's just a little bit more competitive in terms of what margins do come back in. And just given the, I suppose, the environment that we're in at the current time, with certainly a lot of work going on, I think it'll bring it back. Certainly that ability then to have those further discussions. Yes, we are at an advantage where we have used a couple of different companies, so that does, I think, give us some insight.
On the basis of the comment back on. Both recommendations. I have an opportunity to ask the question for.
Councillor McKibben, Councillor McKibben. Speak with that.
I think I've just spoken, I'm prepared to, on the basis of what has been said, I did asked about an alternative, but I've been convinced that, well, to go ahead with the open tendering.
Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will have a couple of questions in a moment, but just firstly to comment on open tendering, I don't have a problem with it in this instance, because we're in July. I can't imagine work starting until September, October at the earliest, so I don't think shortening the time for the tenders is going to be a critical issue. I would be hoping that we might end up only needing a partial stabilisation service and do the rest ourselves, but obviously that will depend on the availability of our own workforce at the time. I did just have a couple of questions coming from the rest of the report. On page 34, the top paragraph talks about geotechnical investigations. And it says that we have engaged in a geotechnical to do geotech investigations in pavement design. But then at the bottom of that page in the table, it talks about that we're going to add 200 mils of gravel for each of the sections. And I'm wondering how we've come up with that figure of 200 when the pavement design hasn't been done.
Through the chair, certainly we understand and we know that the previous pavement has not been built on much of the structure at all. With that geotechnical information that will feed into that, certainly we are looking to also utilise localised gravel from Forestry Corporation in New South Wales. So whilst that process is taking place now in terms of some of the boreholes and bore logs, the informative information using that localised gravel will better inform how much stabilisation additive where we're going with that in terms of utilising that gravel. So that one company has all that information and we'll be doing those lab tests and reports and then determining that pavement, certainly with regard to how much stabilisation product is required.
You're saying that 200 mil is just a preliminary guess pending receiving the pavement design?
Yeah, certainly is an estimate at this stage. It's not a locked in figure. Certainly we'll have to go on that advice from that geotechnical outcome. But again, it's not really going to affect either the quantities that we do acquire from Forestry Corporation. Nonetheless, that's certainly as we're going down that path at this stage. So it could be more. Subject to those findings and recognising also the heavies or the number of heavy vehicles that will be running on that pavement.
And that's part of what was driving the question as well, because I'm aware from my own experience that there's virtually no pavement at all on a lot of that, and that's 200 mils, even if it's stabilised, just felt very light onto me. And my guess is that we'll end up that the pavement design will end up recommending more than that.
Could be figured.
My next question is in the same paragraph, and I'm just not understanding what this is trying to say. In about the lines 4 and 5 of that paragraph, it says the soil classification information will be informative in developing a suitable pavement design, robust enough, be counterintuitive to the operational heavy haulage weights of the timber industry. I just can't make sense of that sentence at all.
I think what it's supposed to say is certainly being accommodating for certainly the heavy vehicles, not counterintuitive. Is probably not the right words.
I think that's the main word that was tripping me up. I couldn't make sense of it all.
Change that to assist.
My final question is just about the seal. It talks about 2-coat seals being applied, and I think that's pretty much the standard practice. I've always felt that there are a number of advantages in doing a primer seal and then coming back later with a primer seal. And I'm just wondering whether you've given any consideration to changing our standard seal to do a primer seal instead.
Look, certainly I do take on board certainly primer seals, depending on the time of the year and when you're running them. We didn't and haven't banked on certainly putting a primer seal down. Nonetheless, we have found that running, certainly a 14.7 or 14.10 type 2K pitching seal has been more than satisfactory. And I think even in the circumstances of this particular road with the volumes of heavies that are currently running on it, wouldn't be detrimental and or necessitate the need to put a primer seal down. I'm certainly not opposed to it, but certainly it's going to add additional cost to do that.
Well, I don't want to take up more time of the whole meeting, but happy to talk to you and give you my thoughts of why I think there are a number of advantages to primer seals, but we'll do that out of session.
All right, anyone else? Councillor McCarthy.
Just to the director, with the letting of these contracts, does that mean that our staff won't be involved with any road verge once it's been prepared. Like our presently out on the Campbell's River Road where they had to do the batter and
Yeah, through the chair, certainly that would mean that if we were to do a full service, we would be looking at those contractors that are engaged. Certainly from the grading perspective, that they would be finishing the roads like that as also.
okay, thank you.
Any more? All right, I'll put the recommendation, all in favour? Unanimous? All right, item 1303, the O'Connell Recreation Ground funding allocation. Recommendation is that council seek a variation to the existing grant allocation for the O'Connell Recreation Ground to reflect the endorsed O'Connell master plan. So mover and seconder, Councillor McCarthy. Councillor Tremblay, Councillor McCarthy.
Yeah, I'm happy to see that yeah, we put in a few things and now the community has indicated they don't want them, so. And we really allocate the money to other projects on the same site. The only thing I can't understand is on page 38. Current earth moving contractor. Who's our current earth moving contractor? Don't we have?
Through the chair, Nicholson did our first.
We did a
did our
good job.
first.
Yeah, no, but when you read this. Yeah. Our current. So it's the one that done the other project,
Correct.
okay?
Who started the project? Yes,
Okay, no.
sorry.
Nick, that's Nicholson. isn't it?
Yeah, I know who it is, but it doesn't read right, that's all, but anyway. Because if we're gonna do the car park, why did we let him go in the first place? And not complete the car park while we're doing it, but anyway, that's, so,
General Manager.
Yeah, no, through the chair, we had a space in time to utilise that contractor. The contractor was engaged to do a number of projects in accordance with the quote that was earmarked to undertake, and he completed that project. So now we're moving into that second phase, which includes the preparation of the car park, the finalisation of the drainage, a number of other things as highlighted in the.
yes, and does the car park still form part of the master plan of being 0.5 metres above the recreation ground?
Through the chair, that's where we're going with this project, yes.
Okay, thank you. And when are we reinstating the existing bore in respect that it was a community grant? It needs to be reinstated so that facility is down there and available to the community.
Yeah, through the chair, we understand that commitment, and but we want to do it once and do it right. That's the rationale behind it. I understand the commentary. We've been fortunate at this point in time where the use of that bore probably isn't as prevalent as what it would have been when it was put in place, being in the drought. But I understand the comment, and we're looking to do that. We want to do it once and do it right. That's the answer to the question. So that's why it hasn't been reactivated at this point in time.
Thank you.
Councillor Tremblay.
I'm happy to second the reallocation and get the project moving along. And just as Councillor McCarthy, you have raised this several times about how he wasn't retained. It was a weather window that he did the work and he had to go away and do another project. So we were dealing with circumstances around wet weather, and we're so lucky that he got in and did what he did for us. And we're now ready to move along.
Councillor McKibben.
Thank you. I'm obviously in support of this, but I just had a couple of questions if I could. Then I'll probably, with the bore, because we'll have to pipe it across to Beaconsfield Road. Obviously we want to ensure that a pipe's got to go in a trench. We want to ensure that that trench is not going to, if we do the car park and we start to destroy it, it's not going to cause us a problem by not having put the pipe work across to Beaconsfield Road first. In that, we have to go longer or in a different, I don't know, but I'm sure you're aware of that. But I'm just wondering, do we need to allocate, or should we be considering, even on a temporary basis, allocating some money to do that so that we don't have to have difficulties in doing the trench in the future because of the infrastructure we have to install for the car park. That's my first question. Oh, might as well. The second question is, I'm assuming that the irrigation system will run off the bore. And I know that the quotes have come in a lot more expensively than we contemplated. All I would suggest is that if we are, obviously, it is in everyone's interest that we have an irrigation system that is not going to cause us a lot of manual work in the future. And it obviously meets the requirements of watering the oval, and at least the oval. And if we've got garden beds up around the shearing shed, if I can call it that. So it's going to be it's a juggling act because of the costs, but also we don't want to, there's nothing worse than trying to retrofit a better irrigation system in the future when you've got your nice oval in place, you've got all of, you start to do your landscaping. So I think that, and I know you will be that we need to do due consideration to that. We don't want an inadequate irrigation system as much as
I'll take all that as.
it is a problem.
Through the chair, I think you've answered the question that I was going to answer in that way.
Yeah.
We don't want to have to come back if we don't want to, but we also need to recognise that the oval itself needs to be consistent within the grant funds that we've been allocated. Right? We don't want to come back to council and say, hey, we need some more money for this, which is the reason why we now, if council endorse this, have the opportunity to move money and seek changes in order to get these things in place. It's also the reason why we've come back and said the irrigation system that we would have loved to put in is way too much at this point in time. That doesn't mean that the money's lost, because if there's a grant that comes up in the future that we can put this in place, is the perfect opportunity to do so. However, now we've gone back to those irrigation companies and said, supply something to us that would allow us to retrofit should we need to. And there's a talk of like the 2 huge tanks that we need to put in to support the water that then utilises these things. So we're trying to be proactive in delivering these things, but if we're going to spend more money than we have available to deliver this project, then that's something that council will need to decide, and we're at this point in time trying to get it within the funding allocation that we have.
I understand that, but my only, and again, it's a comment if I could. If we at least get the pipe work in, that's a big advantage, because at least you don't have to re-rip up the ovals and all that, which I'm sure aware. And again, if we have to put in our revision to relocate the bore pipe, maybe we should do that so that it doesn't imprint on any other infrastructure we have to put in the future.
And it's noted within the report that sits outside.
Yes, it's
something.
Yes,
that we're trying to fit in.
yes, right. Okay, understand. Thank you.
Anyone else? Put the motion, all in favour? Unanimous. 1304, development application 10/2022.21.1, storage shed. The recommendations of council very controls C64, carports and garages of the Oberon Development Control Plan 2001 to allow additional floor area for the proposed garage, and division to be called in accordance with section 375A of the Local Government Act 1993. Mover and seconder, councillor Hayden, councillor Tucker, councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation. It looks like the additional meters are only like around 6, which is the carport. And I'm very happy to endorse that recommendation.
Councillor Hayden, councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mood, that last deal set out in the report, as it says, it's a minor and justifiable non-compliance and no submission from the neighbours, and happy to second.
Anyone else wish to comment? The motion, all in favour? Unanimously. 1305, development application 10/2022 6.39.1, a storage shed. And the recommendation is that council vary control C 6.4, carports and garages at the Oberon Development Control Plan 2001 to allow additional floor area for the proposed garage. And item 2, a division be called in accordance with section 375A of the Local Government Act 1993. Councillor Hayden, Councillor Tucker.
Yes, happy to endorse this recommendation. It may be 16.8 metres over, considering its setback and its location. I don't have an issue with endorsing this recommendation. Also, I just wanted to add that I do find it puzzling that the neighbours notified this and yet there's no submission or complaints received. Still very happy to endorse this and move the recommendation.
Councillor Tucker.
I think we can just assume I've just said exactly the same as I did the last.
Okay. Fair enough. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Passed unanimously. Investment policy. Item 1306, investment policy report. The recommendation is that council provide a temporary allowance to vary from the investment policy for a 12-month period in the specific scenario that a banking merger pushes maximum holdings in a rating category or single institution as outlined in the investment parameters 3.5E. Allow for active investments in banks undertaking a merger process to mature at current scheduled dates of maturity to avoid break fees. And 3, notes a thorough review of the investment policy will occur within 6 months and it will be provided to the Audit Risk and Improvement Committee, the ARIC, for review and input. Kind of move and seconder, please. Councillor McKibben, Councillor Tucker, Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In the current circumstances, it seems abundantly reasonable with ME Bank and the Bank of Queensland. When reading this, I also looked at our investment to see whether we do have some with ANZ, but I don't think we have any with Suncorp because there's another merger on the horizon as well. So I do see that probably doesn't affect us because we don't have any with Suncorp. And I'm not sure what Suncorp rated anyway. But so that shouldn't affect us. So I'm happy to proceed on this. Does this, number one, if we did have a ANZ Suncorp situation, does this allow for, this is broad enough to allow for that scenario if something else was to occur in this area as well, or is this specifically targeted to the Bank of Queensland ME Bank, because it does to vary the investment policy for a 12-month period in the specific scenario that a banking merger is put. So it is specific, but it doesn't say which banking merger. So I suppose if it occurred in 2 situations, then this could still apply in 1. Am I right?
Yeah.
That's how I read it.
That's how we.
Okay, because yeah, as I said, I know that we don't have any investments in Suncorp, but it could occur in the next 12 months, and something else could occur. So I'm very happy to move the recommendation in 3 parts.
You, Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. If nobody's fault at all that this situation has arisen, and in fact, I'm impressed that staff have picked up that what has arisen has technically breached the policy and has brought it to council. But it's a minor change for a limited period, and if we weren't to adopt that, then there would be penalties for having to withdraw some of the money. And noting that the policy is going to be reviewed in 6 months anyway, so I've got no problem with going what is recommended.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? I'll move the motion. All those in favour? Unanimous. Passed. Item 1307. Driggs Road, right of carriageway and release of the easement. The recommendation is that council execute the release of easement as it relates to land owned by Mr. and Mrs. Byron, being Lot 1 DP 774223. Part 2, the council notes if records in respect of the extension from Drees Road is redundant and is no longer required by the property owner of lot 1 DP 774223. And part 3, council take appropriate action to have lot 4 in DP 1026840 classified as a public road. Do I move in seconder? Councillor Hayden. Councillor Gibbon. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to endorse the recommendation in all three parts. Relieve council and for it to be classified as a public road again.
Councillor Gibbon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Maybe it's the time I was reading this morning. I had to read it several times, thinking, I think this has been a yo-yo. I think I remember having a previous, was there a previous motion that went the other way on this at some stage in a former term? No.
2001.
Yeah, that's,
Yeah. Councillor McKibben.
yeah, that was before my time, but anyway.
Before us all.
Yes, it has been a bit of a yo-yo, this situation back and forward. And I read it several times and thought, well, I suppose I'm happy if council's happy and the landholder's happy. So yes, I'm more than happy to second it. But I know that there has been some controversy in the past about this.
It's through the chair. This is a matter that we're trying to put to bed.
Yeah.
Please, all
Parties,
parties.
yes.
I note that today we received a signed correspondence from the landowners themselves rather than through a agent or a listener, which was requested on our behalf, just to make sure that they are happy with what's being proposed. At the end of the day, there was a section of road that is road that was never made road. So therefore, it's always been a lot, which means council is also party to the right of carriageway, which we don't want to be part of. There is difference in liability relating to land that's owned by council versus road that's owned by council. So we're trying to put that to bed as part of this as well. But ultimately, because the landowner now has no interest in making the Crown Road part of their land, it reduces the need to establish the section of land which was originally touted as an option. And the only thing that I will say to finalise it is that if the landowners in the future want to close that road, we would have to go back to the same provision of requiring that section of road to be corrected.
All right, do you think there was a bit of a hook in it somewhere? Yeah, okay.
Yes, but it's a 58
I read
metre
it
block
two or
of,
three times. And
it's a 58 metre block of land which relates to the issue that the proponents had.
well, that's,
And it was also the one that council indicated they would do.
thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor, I thank the general manager for explaining it again, because
And I'm confused with all.
no. It, knowing the history of everything and knowing that there was something in the back of the mind, yes, it helps, thank you.
Anyone else?
It's about time this was put to bed. And the owner of the owner that's got the house down there near the Crown Road has been asked to get more advice and has opted not to, and this is the finish of it with a bit of luck.
Let's hope it's all,
Hey,
let's hope it's the finish of it.
won't be.
Anyone else? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Up unanimously. Item 1308, returns disclosing interest. The recommendation of the council note the requirements to lodge a return disclosing interest of councillors and designated persons. So mover and seconder, councillor Hayden. Councillor Trimbo. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, it's procedural and I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Anyone else with a comment on this?
Just one very quick question, Mr. Mayor. It just says that a film has been sent to all councillors. I haven't received one, and I'm just wondering what. Oh, sorry to use the one now.
You can use that one there.
Just tear it out.
Sharon,
Sharon will be right.
We'll provide a separate one.
no, there is a, and there's a word version,
That's all.
there's a word version you can type in.
All right, anyone else? All in favour? Passed unanimously. Item 1309, the sewage treatment plant steering committee update. The recommendation is that council receive report 1309 for information. Note the development of the completed concept plan, design loading report and review of environmental factors, and endorse the procurement of tenders on the basis of a select tender for the detailed design and documentation of the construction tender.
I put forward a slight revision for that because I think there was something missed out. Maybe I was incorrect.
I have seen that, and I think it bears a little bit of discussion.
Because I think we've put what is option 2, the baseline, to council previously, but we haven't put the option 1 to council. The council hasn't actually approved option 1 going to detailed design, which is the revised, what we think is going to be the revised option, and I was uncertain as to whether we were going to go out for detailed design, request for tender with both or with one. I thought you made some comment in the meeting that you might go with both.
So through the chair, the meeting and the minutes was around going for option 1.
That's right.
With 3 additional components attached to it, rather than option 2 as it sat
Which has been approved by council
previously. So this
That's why I think we-
recommendation is to try and to supersede option 2 with option 1.
Yeah.
And also include those 3 additional components that we talked about at the meeting.
At the moment, it doesn't have reference to option 1 and those 3 components. That was my concern. And you indicate, and it was noted in the minutes that it would be put to the council that option 1.
Through the chair,
That's why.
through recommendation 2, we were noting the development and the concept plans. However, taking your commentary and I'm more than happy if council want to, and it will be up to council, mind you, to endorse option 1 if they want to see that as a relevant provision, which I don't disagree with.
Because you can note this, but what's gone to council previously was what I call the baseline, but what was called in the report option 2, which is very strange, but and what we're now suggesting is to go out for RFT for detailed design with something that wasn't that, is not that option 2 and baseline, it's option 1 with 3 additional and all the options, components as additions.
Yeah, which would see pretty much option 2, which we already have endorsement.
Yeah,
But the option 1 is the one that reduces the footprint of the overall
That's right.
plan, and that is where we save a lot of money.
and yes, that's what I'm saying. This council hasn't endorsed option 1 yet. All we've put to.
I agree that option 1 needs to be endorsed.
Yeah.
And
So that's why I'm suggesting that,
and I think we need to include the 3
yes, addition.
extra additions to it.
So I'm sort of suggesting before we get to 3, we need to put or make 3 4 and put in there 3, which is actually doing something with option 1. I wish they called option 2 the baseline or something. It made it very confusing.
So we'll keep item 1 the same.
Yes,
Item 2 is the same.
yes,
Item 3 will be to endorse option 1.
yes,
Over the originally approved option
option
2.
2, and I'll put bracket,
In vice option 2.
yeah. It makes it look like, yeah, that's right. And to add to the, including the 3, what are they, additional components?
We need to itemize those,
Probably need to itemize them, yeah.
which are
Sludge lagoons.
Sludge
The sludge lagoons, the amenities block,
what we're doing.
and the SBR,
SBR,
the sequencing batching reactor.
I'm glad you told me that.
And I'm just saying.
And-
You want me to help? All right, so the new para 3 is endorse option 1.
Sorry, leave, put parrots, the existing 3 is 4. So don't delete it.
Yeah.
So the new para 3 is endorse option 1 brackets spice option 2. Close brackets,
What was the bracket, sorry?
instead of option,
Instead, in lieu of, or instead of.
in lieu of option 2. Including 3 additional components. The sludge lagoons,
Including 3 additional components to be priced separately, isn't that what we want?
Yep.
To be priced separately.
Yep. sludge lagoons, amenity block and SDR.
That is the sequencing.
Yeah, very happy.
Well, it's an alternate motion, yeah,
Okay.
that's why I got in early.
The alternate motion, then you want to be something.
And just in what is now 4, could I suggest that B, the preparation of documentation for the construction tender? It's not, but I think we're preparing the document, we're getting this, design, detailed design to prepare this documentation. That's works for me.
Now, seeing that this was done originally by the steering committee, the members of that committee happy with that?
Yeah, I'm happy to second that.
Yeah, I think it's probably more better reflects what we agreed at the steering.
Well, I think it was, I think you're right.
So,
All right, so can everyone see that, the motion now? All right. Now I have a mover and seconder for the motion.
like,
Keep it this-
Give it has to,
Yeah, given that's good and tuck, okay. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The report speaks for itself, and I obviously asked members of council who weren't on the STP working party meeting that obviously you would have seen what's on page 60 and 61 and what is proposed. The option 1, if I can call it that, has been devised to try and seek a reduction in cost for the sewage treatment plant while keeping the basic functionality of what's proposed for the new sewage treatment plant as previously put to council. But as we all know, this is going to be a costly project, which is going to involve borrowing money, even if we do get further grants. So it's in all our interests that we obviously produce a great sewage treatment plant, but we also try and keep the cost down as much as possible. As you all note, we are what the additional operating costs were if we went with this option 1 STP, which doesn't have a gravity feed of the sewage into it, but is based or into the lagoons, but uses a pumping system. So it's minimal cost, probably the same as it currently with the existing sewage treatment plant. So this is what we're trying to achieve, is to get some cost savings where possible. And that's why we've also asked for pricing for 3 additional components, which we can endorse and go ahead with depending on what they are, or we can leave those for future work and future grants or when we have funds available. But we still get our core STP, which is obviously crucial for this town and going forward into the future, because we've really got an obsolete sewage treatment plants we all appreciate, and we need to move ahead with this project.
Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My main takeout from the steering committee meeting was that we plan to invite tenders in such a way that we can either include or exclude those three components, depending on how the tenders come in and depending on how much money we've got at the time. So it probably doesn't make a real lot of difference if we're thinking of it as option one with the possibility of adding three extra things on, or option two with the possibility of taking three things out. It's the same thing. But the way that's worded is fine by me. But also that in any further applications for funding or in discussions with government departments, we would be proceeding at this stage on the basis of option two, utilising the higher figure as a means of increasing our chances of getting extra funding. The other main point, just to point out, is that we are going with a select tender process rather than open tender process, because the number of companies capable of doing this sort of work is so very limited, and because this has been dragging on for so long, in this instance, it is a case of wanting to reduce the time for inviting and receiving those tenders. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? I would invite members of the council who were not on the sewage treatment plant steering committee to pore over these plans, because they are a thing of beauty.
Well, actually, I really.
Absolutely wonderful. They're great.
Forward the word.
All right, so it's the motion.
Oh,
In favour?
is it?
Against? No one? All right, item 1401, the monthly activity report of the general manager, and the recommendation is that report item 1401 is received with information. Councillor Hayden. Councillor somebody, Timber. I'll be somebody. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation. I'd also like to just say, it's a good report. It's been very busy, and I'd also like to wish Des Foley well. His resignation, in his resignation after 31 years of council.
Yes.
He done a great job.
He did it. Fantastic.
Happy to second. Great report as always. Looks like another very busy month for the team. The general manager. Thank you.
Other councillors?
Just my concern is the staff total numbers. They know the really our operational plan that if we haven't enough staff, that's all.
Through the chair, your concern is the same.
I'm very concerned that some of the staff weren't good enough in the past, and yeah, now we're anyway. Some of the applicants weren't good enough.
Point of order, no judgment, please.
Don't know what you're on about, council, but it's a known fact. So anyway.
Yes, councillor Watt.
Mr. Chair, General Manager, can you, I just was having trouble with the fourth paragraph on page 66. The public liability claims during June relating to vehicle damage claims were declined based on 645. What does that mean?
So it's through the chair, through a request from a councillor there, we were looking at trying to, how do we provide additional information about the claims that we have. 3 claims during June relating to incidents. We often get people coming in saying, oh, I hit a pothole and I've done a rim, or I was driving along and because your jet patcher has rocks in it, flipped up and cracked the windscreen. Those sort of things is what council often give. The Civil Liabilities Act gives council a provision around, not in fact accepting those on the basis of a number of things. And those three instances were all declined on the basis of the provisions outlined in the Civil Liabilities Act. It gives some protection to council.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? I'll put the motion, all in favour? Motion's passed unanimously. Item 1402, monthly activity report, planning and development, and the recommendations that 1402 is received this information. Councillor Hayden and that Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation for information, and it's been an extremely busy month by the looks of it, and then I've noticed a number of applications are up, and hopefully the weather might ease off for people to get their work done.
Councillor McKibben.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Halfway down page 69. Council's current IT system, Civica, does not allow key components to be uploaded into the planning portal. I thought we'd given Civica the flick. Not so?
Through the chair, we're currently running the two systems while we're implementing an EMS.
Okay, so I thought we just about got rid of Civica.
Yeah, so through the chair, this change in technology, in fact, assists us in being able to automatically transition some of the stuff that we've been doing manually.
Yeah.
It's not a council problem, it was always a Civica problem, and it's one of those things that we now have been issued some funding that enables us to do it. And that will also assist us in transitioning into a new EMS system a little bit more efficiently than what we otherwise would have to.
Fine, okay, thank you. On the applications lodged on the planning portal, I know that we are seeming to be getting more on top of them. And unless I'm wrong, I think we've still got some outstanding from March. But most of them are from May and onwards. Is that correct through you, Mr. Mayor, the planning director? Planning development director.
Through the chair, that's correct, Councillor Gibbon.
Yeah, but we seem to be, if I could, getting more on top of them. We seem to be reducing the backlog.
And through the chair, yeah, the applications are the older ones that are still there waiting for information, or we do follow that up periodically to try and get them moved and either approved or off the system.
Okay. So most of the backlog ones are we're waiting information, even though we haven't done a stop the clock, we're just waiting for information.
Through the chair, that's correct, yes.
Okay, that's good. They're the only issue, the only things I'm more than happy to second this report. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yes, with the application lodged, what I can't understand, and I take on board what Councillor McKibben just said. I was approached this week with one that was submitted in January. Still no resolution, though the portal says it's going to be released. It was there for 4 months and then the information sought. So it was there for 4 months without the information being sought and still not released. And it was done by a professional person. So I don't know whether we're really up with it or not, but I spoke to Damien the other day and he said that structural ones, he's the only one that can release them. Do we need someone else in the system to assist him? So we get rid of this backlog. I thought you were a professional and he said that you said the other day, you're the only ones that can release the structural ones, is that right?
Through the chair, I did say, Councillor McCarthy, that on one dealing with the construction units, however, we do have contractor or casual Jacqueline Burns helping and the general manager does assist as well.
Okay.
I do have others, but I'm predominantly the one who's doing the construction.
Okay, if you wouldn't be able to do this one, it'd be conflict of interest, but
That's correct.
like I said, it's
But I-
submitted professionally, but this, it still hasn't been resolved after 6 months. It doesn't seem quite right. Anyway, thank you.
Through the chair, if you could give that to me, I'm happy to take that up.
I'll already give it today and thank you.
Through the chair, if you give it to me, I'm
Okay.
happy to take that up.
Okay, no worries.
Any more? For the recommendation, all in favour? Unanimously? Item 1403, monthly activity report for technical services. The recommendation is that item 1403 is received as information. Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben, Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation for the item as received as information. I just want to say a big thank you to Preston Technical Services and his outdoor staff for all of the work and the effort that the outdoor staff have put in over the inclement weather that we've had. That has been very, very trying as they repair these roads, and the next day they're trashed again due to the weather. So I just want to say thank you. Your work is appreciated.
Thank you. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There have been various good comments from the community about the Baldwin Bridge, which has been completed. And appreciated. Obviously, the Swallows Nest Bridge is still in train, and I think the old wooden bridge is still in place for people to use at this stage. I note the problems with Arkstone Road, etc., due to the inclement weather. And considerable problems we've had with Noonan's Hill Road, that when you put all the formwork up, it went underwater. So when you were trying to do the approaches. So yes, you have had a very hard time to deal with. Just wondering on the bottom of page 7980, obviously it's close to people's heart, this Arkstone Road slippage again. I note that we're having discussions with some of the landholders, both the general manager and the technical services director. Are we getting any closer to having a resolution with the owners on the east side? I think it is. It's the preferred route, but it is longer, and I think there are more than when we originally thought there was only one landholder involved. There's 3 or 4, I think you indicated. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm.
Yeah, through the mayor. Yeah, certainly there are a number of landholders on the eastern side, which is the preferred route to go up as a lesser gradient, in option to realigning the road. Discussions are still in progress, and certainly we'll be following that up again shortly with those parties for in principle agreement or approval to then facilitate any survey.
We have in principle support one, we just need to give it others.
So when we have that in principle support from the others, do you think it's opportune to take the local member or someone out there to have a look at it? So they, because when you actually get there and see it, you can really, it hits you in the,
Through the chair, or I in fact talked to the deputy premier.
I know, yeah.
Currently the premier, acting premier this week, about this exact road, and he indicated a number of fundings that potentially are upcoming, which this may be suitable for. I indicated it's getting a bit more serious than that, given the notice, and he indicated that when he's next in and around, take him out and have a look at it. So that is currently where we're at in terms of conversations with our local member.
Well, thank you, gentlemen, for being so proactive.
I think it'll be a little bit more than just that person involved.
Yes, I do too, yeah. Right. If I could, the Oberon Street awning, I noticed that the business involved was not present when we sought to have a meeting with him. And have we had any update on that? It's halfway down page 80, it's in the Oberon awning.
Through the mayor, at this stage, that information is with the owner. We're waiting just another meeting with that particular person who owns that business.
Yes.
To facilitate I suppose their views and feedback in relation to their position on what we're proposing to do. So at this stage, we don't have a resolve on it, unfortunately. But that's, I'll bring something back to the next month's council meeting, hopefully with the position on that.
Okay, thank you very much. More than happy to second this report.
Any more? Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a couple of quick questions, both on page 77. The first one just relates to the 1500 bridges, both Swallows Nest and Baldridge. So in both cases, there've been full construction by a contractor with council staff providing some checking and supervision. I'm just interested to know in that situation how the system works with testing, particularly concrete testing, because of course that's the major part of making sure those bridges are done properly. Does the contractor arrange concrete testing or does council arrange it? And if it's the contractor, do we get the results to make sure that the concrete is up to standard?
Yeah, for the chair, that's a very good question, and certainly we did order cylinder tests. The contractor, that was part of their obligations, part of the contract.
So they arrange them?
So we will certainly get those independent reports regarding the 28-day MPA strengths and the like.
Yeah, and that's the point, to make sure we get them in a timely manner so that if there's any problem, we haven't built a whole lot of other stuff on top of it before we realise there's a problem.
Yeah, look, through the chair again, certainly I don't suspect there will be any issues. There certainly wasn't with the Baldridge Road Bridge today. So again, same companies utilised in terms of providing concrete for this particular structure at Swallows Nest. So I certainly will follow that report up again. As we get forward.
I was just curious as to how that was organised. My other question relates to fixing local roads, Arkstone Road, and it comments that adverse weather has delayed the start of the roadside shoulders and vegetation, and branches. And just relating back to the earlier report about Arkstone Road, where it says there's an environmental report being prepared and that's expected to be provided later this month. So I assume that's the other thing that is preventing any work starting on the roadside, that we have to wait until the environmental report is done to make sure that they're complying with it. Would I be right in assuming that?
Through the chair, that is correct. We certainly part of our due diligence for that project. That's what we are pending that report to ensure that we're not doing anything outside the untoward.
Yeah, especially with the comment about there being some important habitat along there.
Correct.
Thank you. That was all, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I'll put the motion that 1403 is received information. Unanimously. Item 1404, corporate services, monthly activity report. Recommendations report 1404 is received with information. Councillor Hayden. Councillor McKibben. Councillor Hayden.
Yes, I'm happy to move the recommendation for the information. I'd like to congratulate once again on Matt Webb for his position Corporate Services Director, and congratulate his team on all the efforts in the last month with NAIDOC and several other events that have been occurring, and the NBN at the Black Springs Hall is working well. It's already been tested at a meeting, and the community would like to offer their thank yous as well. Happy to move.
Thank you. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, it's good to see that we're getting a new the telephoning system is going to be installed, migrate on the 27th, and to provide for the telephonic system. The open office, I'm assuming that we're moving over to these modules progressively, as is indicated. And it's going to be very exciting to see the start of the venue and events booking module, which will be, I think, major impact. I just noticed the first one is a cemetery module. Is that for logging all the people in the cemeteries around every cemetery in the? It's good. It's interesting we start with that one.
Through the chair, it's based on a significant amount of work that we've already done, that's based to assist.
So we had all the material that we could put in.
There's a lot of work undertaken in that space.
Right, but we automated much better, so, that's one of the first ones we have onboarded as a smaller module. Right, okay, and the rest are following there. And importantly, I'm very pleased to see that the 21-22 interim audit has come back with positive feedback and no alarming commentary, so that's really good, that's puts us in a good position for our actual end of year audit. So thanks to you, obviously, to Zoe, we've been working hard on it. I'm more than happy to second this report, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? I'll put the motion. All in favour? 1403 is, sorry. 1404 is, item 1405, statement of investments. Recommendations of council report, item 1405 as information. Councillor Hayden, Councillor Gibbon.
It's getting a bit embarrassing.
Someone different. You two keep your hands up next time.
Yes,
Councillor Hayden.
I'm to move the recommendation of the report as received for information.
Councillor Gibbon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm more than happy to second it. I note with interest that some of our latter investments are now attaining an interest rate of 3.2%. And in fact, one at Defence Bank on the 22nd of June is earning 4.2%, which is markedly over what we were attaining from those in, say, June 21, which are 0.43%. Yes, that's something. That's right. So that'll obviously assist with our income to some measure. So I'm more than happy to second this.
Anyone else? Motion all in favour? 1405 passed unanimously. 1406 water and sewer plant report, and the recommendation to 1406 is received as information. Just I'll start with three. Was that Councillor Grant? Councillor what?
Encourage you.
Councillor Grant.
Yes, thank you.
You're the only one.
I'll certainly get the, report and feed the information. Got, why is the water consumption so much? Do we have an explanation for that?
Chair, no, I don't really have a total explanation.
Especially when it's rained all the time.
Yes, certainly, it is showing certainly an increase in water consumption.
Are there leaks somewhere or?
Would it be from the mains?
Mains flushing.
Well, that was done before then.
Yeah, look, to the point, I'm not quite sure, that would have some influence on that, no doubt, with flushing of hydrants and the routine maintenance that has been ongoing, but yeah, look, certainly I don't know, other than residential consumption would be higher whilst it hasn't been wetter than average, so sorry, I don't have an exact science on that.
Would it be possible we've had more visitors into the area as well? People have maybe.
Could be. There's a considerable increase in the volume of water that's gone into our.
I get the second to the hazard. Say first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, yes, I'm happy to second this. There's quite a bit of technical information there that on the plan upgrade and proactive maintenance that I don't really understand, but deliveries of caustic soda, etc. I assume that's to counteract acidity, but anyway, interesting reading, so yes, happy to second.
I jumped the gun slightly. Chris has got technical service director, a small update on one of the items there.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. On page 92, where it's indicated there were no reports of dirty water during June, that's not in fact correct. There were 2 that were received. Both were received from a local commercial premises in town, indicating that they had discolored water. Certainly The actions taken were to flush hydrants and investigate further. At the present stage, there is some issues within the network still that we haven't exactly identified, but we are working on that basis where we have New Flow Australia coming back very shortly to finish some of the work that was unfinished during the period when they were here earlier in the year. And as part of that also, we're hoping to engage them in assisting us with some of the ongoing matters in different areas at this present time. Just wanted to clarify there were two reports of dirty water during
You technical service? Any other, councillor Tucker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one quick request on that issue of the water issues. And a couple of people who spoke to us at the start of the meeting have been promised there will be replies in the near future. Could those replies be copied to us as well?
Any reason why not?
Thank you. That was all.
And you, councillor Hayden?
Yes, just looking at the water consumption, the water consumption has gone down from May to June and is declining through the June period. In May, when our lines were clean, it had peaked up with a lot more usage, so I can see that this is declining. But then if there is a little bit of murky activity in the water, they're going to be using a little bit more water as they're letting the flow through come through before so the turbidity goes out.
Okay.
Sorry, another question, please, Mr. Mayor, for the Director of Technical Services. The question manganese toxicity was raised. I've never heard of that. Have you? I know you'll get back to us on that, but is that an issue that you're aware of?
Certainly, I think the words probably in toxicity, depending on levels of concentration, certainly may not be the correct for this particular report, but elevations within parameters, I suppose, where the report was more directed about the testing that has been undertaken, and 95% of the case is really certainly at the water guidelines.
So you're essentially going on the fact that it meets guidelines rather than.
That is then, as in reference to toxicity.
Yes, I guess that's the only way you can do it.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor McKibben?
I'd only make an observation, Mr. Mayor, that the wastewater volume in June was considerably over that in June 2021 as well, which seems to indicate that maybe the water's going right through.
There's a real step up. Councillor Calvin?
Just with the water complaint and the ongoing water problem we soon have on the main street, have we ever considered redirecting the water? To blocking a main off in a certain area and having the water flow from another way? In respect that the one that happened up in Pine Street, the dirty water was a sample there, is right off that big main, right next to it apparently, when they flushed the main. And he received dirty water, so is it the, anyway, that's all I was asking.
Through the chair, I think the difficulty is in it all being interlinked or a ring main in most instances, not all, but certainly where it's possible, was the mechanism when we actually cleaned the line. But in terms of dirty water and chasing through the system, depending on demand at any one time, is where actually, it may raise itself in principle. So it's sometimes often difficult to isolate a section and certainly get that result that you're indicating.
I didn't say isolate, I said redirect. Yeah.
Usually isolate a main, not always going to be the desirable outcome.
Okay. But we haven't tried it.
I think it'd be difficult in terms of the amount of premises that it serves, particularly in the Oberon Street component.
Okay.
Any more? Motion, all those in favour? Passed unanimously. And item 1407, monthly update on the status of council resolution. Recommendations of the report 1407 is repeated as information. Moved and seconded. Councillor McKibben, Councillor Tucker. Councillor McKibben.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Detailed report, if I could just go through a couple of things. Halfway down page 94. I realise we have a confidential report involving the Oberon Sports Complex. And I was wondering, probably appropriate if we could get a JRPP update in, as part of that, when we discuss that in confidential, unless you want to do it now. Probably more appropriate to do it now because obviously things are moving.
Through the chair, our understanding is that the information required by the JFPP was provided to them, was uploaded into the portal. It's been dealt with, and we're waiting for the detailed final report to be provided to them,
Provided to them or provided?
by us to them.
Okay, so when's that likely to occur?
I'll defer to the.
And that's for a approval in concept, approval to the, in concept.
Through the chair, very similar to how we started the hub.
Yeah.
A concept approval for the works with a detailed design to be followed.
So that'll shorten the period for the detailed design to be approved once if the detailed design is within the boundaries of the concept. Is that right?
That is absolutely correct, councillor.
So through the chair, the documentation that was uploaded to the portal is also being referred back to Transport for New South Wales and the police who requested that information. We're waiting on that response before we then finalise our draft report to go to the JRPP for them, or sorry, the report to go to the JRPP for their decision. No date has been set at this stage from them.
Right. I haven't got a question, but I think it's more appropriate. I'll raise it later. The next one is if I put page 96, second last item. Do we have any date for this? Is sorry, 19/15/03/22. Do we have any date for when the contractor can do the electrical boxes? Because as I understand, we have the air conditioning units installed, ready to go. We're just waiting for this box work to be done. Do we know if it's imminent or it's going to be months or?
Through the chair, we're anticipating in the next 1 to 2 weeks for them to get on site. There's a number of things that we have our contractor program to do at those facilities.
At those facilities. Okay. And if I put on page 97. In respect to the first item, do we have a date when we're likely to have those alternative options on the Apex Park amenities? Because all we've got in the progress is noted, which is not really appropriate. So are we saying August or?
98.
Sorry, page 98, top item.
Yeah, through the chair.
Not the 22/19/04/22.
Through the chair, certainly getting contractors has been a difficult part of the stage to even get quotations as a required, that are required to actually even consider. So that is ongoing. I'll update that for the next council.
If you could, and if there is a problem with getting contractors, maybe rather than just note it saying council's having difficulties getting contractors, blah, blah. We're continuing to push this. We hope, just say hope to have it done by a certain date, but that's more meaningful than for the note of it's a bit meaningful. Right. And I'm sorry, the next one. No, it's the next, sorry, it's the. Yes, the next one. The page, sorry, going back 97, over on partial road reconstruction. The guidelines for developers. Have we got any date for that? That's the top item on page 97. Force has got its services and planning and development teams.
Yeah, that's a carryover from the previous page.
Yeah. realise, but do we have a date for when that's going to be done?
Through the chair, no, there is no set date at this stage, but the matter is certainly ongoing. And will be formalised part of the upgrade to the DCP.
So we're looking at December this year or June next year?
I am a little bit hesitant to be able to put a date on that, unfortunately.
I think just through the resourcing is the problem at this point in time. We're currently looking for a new technical services manager.
Yeah.
Which has meant that the director has spent a fair bit of time on projects.
No, I understand it. So why don't we
That
just,
would be-
can we just add it when it comes up again? The preparation of this, of these guidelines is subject to available resources. Being, et cetera, or something. And we, yeah, just some comment to say that there's a resources issue. I appreciate it. The next one, this one, this is the sale of the land, Court of Abercrombie and Campbell's River. Have we any update? Because this has been, we've had this comment, and I'm not saying it's anything to do with council, probably the applicant, but this has been going for 4 months. Have we not had any more clarification from the applicant and doing and throwing?
Through the chair, we did have some further supply of information from the applicant, and council, staff to go back to him with that. So it's with him at this stage. Similar situation, yeah, perhaps the comment, I'll make sure the comment's updated for the next meeting that it's still with the.
Yeah, sorry, we went back on the such and such date
Yeah.
to the applicant, and we are awaiting his response. Just we have a date when we went back, so we know, yeah.
Okay.
Because it's sort of, it's been going for 4 months and the comment's been the same.
Through the chair, that doesn't mean that council isn't doing anything.
No,
We're actively working with the potential, but there has been a number of things that I've seen, the things that have been provided back to council, and they provide no additional information that could assist council. So we're trying to work with that person in order to rectify that one.
Okay. The page 99. This item 07-1705-22, which is the second row down. I thought we'd agreed to the transfer of the funds from the waste fund under this project was to move ahead, so I thought we'd given this to an external consultant, external stone builder whose name has just gone in my head.
Glenroy Stone,
That's right, Glenroy Stone.
not this one.
Oh, is it? Is this one being done internally, isn't it? Is this Glenroy Stone, this one?
Through the chair, I think there was a discussion around
Yeah, Glenroy Stone, sorry. So I thought we'd given this and that there was just a problem of Glenroy, of the contractor having sufficient time to do this.
Yeah, so through the chair, that's where it is. But there, as resolved by council, there is a number of things that council will be doing. And then the stonemason will come in and finish the project. So there's a combination in this instance to support that resolution.
Absolutely. So could I suggest the comment be changed to council is looking at the footings and what did we put up the best brick wall, don't we?
Yeah.
And doing that. And what we're, so I thought the options had been investigated. What we have to do is do the preliminary works. And then I think the stone contractor indicated it had some priority projects first.
There are a number of projects that
Yeah.
person is engaged with council.
That's right. And at this stage, you might say we're anticipating it being done in the latter part of 2022, something like that. Maybe that's, and if it goes out, we'll update it. But at the moment, I thought the option, yeah, Just didn't think the comment was quite clear.
I'm through the chair, the comment about we're investigating options as to when the project can be internally resourced.
Okay, right, well, that's good.
That is what the comment says.
Yeah.
However, there are a number of elements to this which we need to also further investigate. But I understand your comment, and if we can put some timing around that, based on our construction programs that we have, we'll look to do that.
I'm happy with the rest. I'm more than happy with, I can't remember the proposed, this is second.
You propose.
I'm more than happy to move this report, and it does give us a good understanding of where we're moving with a lot of this work.
And I think you seconded it, Councillor Tucker.
You haven't had to say,
Well, go.
no, I've got no question.
Anyone else? Councillor McCarthy.
It's just what Councillor McKibben spoke about the land on the Conbury Road, the Conbury Road and Campbell's River Road. Shouldn't we be procuring the land even though this developer not go ahead with it, in respect that we've advertised this as a site for a shop, which we don't own, and if this developer falls over, you still want a shop there, don't you? So shouldn't we be sourcing the procurement of the ground as council?
So through the chair, council's previous resolution says they didn't want to do it. So then then a further investigation has been undertaken because a further person has come to council and you've asked us to go back and do this. So I think it's probably diligent. We're trying to do our due diligence in this space.
I just didn't think a private person could source a road reserve, that was all.
Through the chair, if council agrees to go down a path of sale, they will finalise the project as per the previous resolution that we've. And I'm not talking about the resolution we currently got. There was one that went back to say, don't do it.
Okay.
Anyone else? I'll put the motion, item 1407, all those in favour? Yep. Passed unanimously. There is no urgent business. What I intend doing is going to confidential, and then we'll take a break for a couple of minutes so that people can refresh themselves. And in accordance with Local Government Act 1993 and the Local Government Act General Regulation 2005, in the opinion of the General Manager, following businesses of a kind as referred to in section 110A2 of the Act, which should be dealt with in a part of the meeting closed to the meeting of the public. At this point, I would ask mover.
Go confidential.
All in favour? All right, thank you, Peter.
You're okay for a minute, Peter, because we've done a break.
And and open council recommenced at 9:16 PM. The following resolutions were made while the meeting was closed to the public. And there were no members of the public present. Item 1601, entering into contracts for supply and delivery of bulk fuel. The council resolved to accept and sign a contract with the following organisations for the supply and delivery of bulk fuel. Lowe's Petroleum, Oils Plus Holding Australia, pending resolution of insurances, On-Site Fuel Rural, Express Group, and Park, pending resolution of insurances. And advise the Central West New South Wales joint organisation of its decision, and the General Manager be authorised to execute the supply contract. Item 1602, write-off request, debtor account 1001.01. Council resolved that council do not write off the debtor account 1001.01, but instead offer a payment plan arrangement for full cost recovery to assist with a residential contribution towards the installation of curb and gutter works in Dudley Street, Oberon. Item 1603, rates write-off request, assessment 12392181. The council do not write off rates for assessment 12392181, but instead offer a 6-month payment plan with no interest charges to cover the current arrears. Item 1604, Oberon Sports Ground. The council delegate to the mayor and general manager in consultation with members of the Oberon Sports Complex Working Party, the authority in accordance with the recommendations contained within this report. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, members of the press. The next ordinary meeting of Oberon Council will be held on Tuesday, the 16th of August, 2022, commencing at 5:30 p.m. in the Oberon Council Chambers. I now declare this meeting closed at 9:18 p.m. And thank you for those who attended via Zoom and in person. Well done, councillors.